Felicia, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
One minute to tea time, everybody. Okay. Good morning. It is 8:30, so at least California time. So it's time to kick off Open Forum. It's Joel and Felicia here at PRS and the Roadmap. And as I shared with everybody last week, I was going to put together a little bit of a presentation this morning from an industry gathering that I attended. Share some of what the key points of that meeting were. So the chart that you're looking at right now is one strong measure of an insurance company's statutory reserves. Now we have to kind of do away with Aflac because it's a whole different ball game as to what they do, etc. But the higher this number, the more financially solid the company is. So you can kind of look at the companies that you like, and it will kind of give you an idea of where they stand. Any questions on this particular slide?
Joel, did you put this together, or was this something that you got from somebody?
Everything you see in this presentation has been copied and pasted from the handouts that were at that industry function.
So for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why, the John Hancock's not shown on there.
It would have been inadvertently missed by whoever put it together. Good point, though.
Okay.
I'm surprised Genworth looks so good.
I'm sorry?
I'm surprised Genworth looks that good.
Yeah, it's sort of, I mean, they're certainly, now, I don't know if you saw this, they stopped writing certain types of life insurance products given the new reserves they have to set up. They basically priced a lot of products very wrong, so they are, for an indefinite period of time, out of the life insurance marketplace. Mortality, very interesting. So if you are a couple, age 65, today, there is a 10% chance one of them is actually going to survive to age 100. Now take a look on the bottom. Here's this couple age 65. There is a 50% chance that one of them is going to live beyond 91. So it kind of becomes more and more problematic if you're working with a 65-year-old to actually only go to age 90. There's a 1 in 4 chance that a couple age 65 will live beyond 96.
Wow.
So we'll make these slides available, but this is something you really want to use with your clients. And then male 65, female 65, etc. And again, the whole idea of Open Forum Friday, there's so many things that, like you all, I come into contact with because of the number of carriers we do things with or the number of producers we have relationships with around the country. And anytime I see something that I think is valuable on any financial topic, I'm going to make sure I keep trying to bring this to you guys. And then in the event you can't make these Friday meetings, which I hope you do them live, they're always recorded, so you can get the link from Felicia. With respect to IUL, interesting factoid, when you look at the crediting method for the options, like for example, annual point-to-point, you know, a multi-year endpoint. So, for example, that means like a 2-year or a 5-year. You see the various things here. Here you can see the percentages of all monies that are going into an IUL product, how they're actually being allocated. And then over on the right side is telling you the type of accounts that they're actually being allocated to. Now, when we look at that, I'm sorry, did somebody have a question?
I was just going to ask if you could pop back up for 1 second. Just wanted to see something. Joel, with all the carriers that you're using, what are you seeing as the default rate for what you're using between the Penns, the Pacific Lifes, etc.? Are they all around 7, or are you seeing higher than that on some of them?
Hold your question. I think I'm 2 slides away.
Oh, okay.
Annualized compounded returns of the S&P. Now look at this. We're just talking about 10 years ending 12/31. So this is a 1-year point-to-point, 8.53 for that 10-year period. If you did put money in 2011 and got an interest credit 2 years later, so a 2-year bucket, put money in 2012, looked at it in 2014. If you did this during this 4-year period of time, you'll see compounded return. 5-year index, if you just put it in one time that matured December 31, 15, compounded annual return 13.19. But you got to have clients that truly appreciate that they cannot look at their account statements, because while you're waiting for some potential interest credit to happen, the statements look horrible. So you have to really educate your client that we're not, you know, the statements on their face are impossible to take place, because if you bought a policy on January 1 and you were in a 1-year point-to-point, the account and cash values that are projected it's impossible to happen, because the interest credit cannot happen inside that policy year, right? The interest credit is going to happen like probably 10 to 20 days after the policy year. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep. And then if you dollar cost average, you're looking at 2 years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's a method to this madness. The carriers are beginning to appreciate that these reports are on their face incorrect and misleading, and they are all working towards some form of a solution for reporting. So let's talk about AG 49. This is going to limit the maximum illustrated rate a carrier can show in an illustration. It is actually based on a specific look-back approach, and all insurers must use it. Now, this is not going to do away with supplemental marketing material. That what would happen if you took a different approach, a different allocation, because that's how the carriers will be able to show the impact and the potential added value or alpha of different crediting methodologies. So what happens is the approach takes all 25-year look-back periods over the last 66 years. So if you had put money in on January 1, 66 years ago, and looked at the average annual rate of return over that next 25-year period, based on your cap rate, your participation rate, your floor, and your index account design, it averages all of these potential periods, which are over 10,000. Any questions about that? Now, this is Voya, and Voya did a presentation of their 5-year global look back, their 1-year S&P, 2-year global, and what if you did a 50-50 blend of the 1-year and 2-year. And what was interesting about this, you looked at what they call annualized returns, what the minimum was for the period, the maximum, what the average was, what happened essentially 100% of the time, what AG 49 would allow. So if you use this 5-year global strategy with Voya, AG 49 would allow a 7.43% illustrated rate. Now think about that for a second. A unknowledgeable CPA or attorney goes, that's way too high. But this is essentially what would have happened going back all of those years with over 10,000 possible outcomes. This is the average of all those outcomes. So stop getting caught up on what the rate looks like and start thinking about if this were the strategy with how regulators want it to be shown to have the most conservative approach to the illustration, this is basically where you would end up. And so, Barry, you in particular, I think that AG 49 becomes even more important to you. Now, Barry is a person that historically has always liked to be very, very conservative. And on the surface, that's great. But what happens is you can get to a place where what you're actually doing and showing has become more unrealistic on the bell curve. In other words, you're not in the middle of the bell curve. This is put AG 49 for whatever product you're using, whatever allocation you're using, is essentially putting you in the middle of the bell curve about what a client should expect 80% of the time. That's basically what it's saying in layman's terms. Now, if you want to even be more conservative, in other words, 10,000 possible outcomes aren't enough, take AG 49 and subtract 50 or 75 basis points, do what you want to do. But AG 49 is already doing it for you. So don't, my recommendation, don't illustrate under what the regulators want. Any comments?
Makes sense.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So this kind of takes away what I call the Barry approach. You know, I don't want to play games. I don't want to give people some false expectation. Well, let's use what the regulator actually says we should be using. That's going to protect the consumer and never overinflate. And this is a conservative approach to illustrating a index universal life policy. Now, yes.
So just real quick, so what are you, I don't care about the fixed account, what are you illustrating based on the money that you're putting in the index?
Whatever AG 49 allows.
Okay.
Now, the number of possible outcomes using AG 49 was 10,092 is what it basically means. There will always be 10,092 possible outcomes that were averaged. And basically what they're doing is 80% of the time what would have happened, i.e. the middle of the bell curve. 6.58 would have happened if you had a 0% floor and a 13.5% cap and a 100% participation rate. The average of all the returns, 7.47. So if you said, what's the probability, what would I expect if I actually showed a 7% rate, essentially 67% of the time, you would get that outcome. 80% of the time, you would get 6.58. 90% of the time, 6.1. 100% of the time, 4.74. I believe you need to have this sheet, especially this, to give a client more confidence in what they're doing based on the product that you're using, based on the index bucket that you're using. Does that make sense to everybody?
Question. They're saying 100% percentile, you'll have a 4.74% minimum return?
Correct.
Okay.
This happened 100% of the time. Essentially, any time you put money in, you would have had an expectation of getting at least 4.74 or better. And that's the average of that bucket over a 25-year period of time. So if I put money in March of whatever the year was 66 years ago, and I looked at all of the average returns of that bucket over the next 25 years, blah, 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 this is the percentage of the time or more that you would have earned that rate. Felicia, can you mute whoever that is?
It's someone on the phone, Joel. I can't mute them.
Okay. Questions?
Okay, Joel, I have a question. At the bottom there, I've never seen this before. It talks about the presentation is designed to show the effects of different caps, floors, participation rates, etc. Typically, this comes from an insurance company, and they're specific, like 1 year or whatever.
Yeah, it was this.
If I'm,
It was this particular approach.
oh, so it's not different. It is a floor of 13.5, etc. Is there any way to get? Is there any way to get this for what the caps are today? You know, 10, 11, whatever.
Yeah. For example, you can go to John Hancock, Pac Life, I think Penn Mutual, and Voya, and they have these calculators that do this.
And what is the calculator called?
I don't know. Call your rep, and they'll let you know.
Hey, Joel.
It's definitely the calculation of AG49. It's an AG49 calculator. Yes.
All right.
Joel, can you hear me? Ron?
I'm sorry.
Joel?
Yes.
This is Ron.
Hi, Ron.
Hi. I was told, and I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, that part of the changes that the regulators wanted with regard to IUL were that they didn't want these probability charts inside the illustrations any longer because they said it was sending a mixed message to the client. Is that incorrect information?
In the illustration, I don't think you're going to find this.
Yeah, I thought it.
This is not in the illustration. It's just how you get to AG49. And then if you wanted to know, literally, if I believe I'm going to get a 7.3%, that the market's going to get, that what is my expectation to get 7.3? It would then tell you 67% of the time expectation. So you can work with a client and show it. This just cannot be in an illustration.
makes sense now. Yeah, because this was a big way that we were selling in the past, showing the 95%, 98% of probabilities. So yeah, and it's a shame that we can't use it now.
So some of you may know a guy by the name of one of the real big producers in our industry. He's a incredible sales professional, all top industry main platforms. Chuck, somebody I know, he's just a super impressive guy. So he's got a company called Red. And like you all, just take a look at that. You know, he's a performance consulting and training company that teaches the disciplines of leadership, strategy, and sales. And he develops strategic plans. And at the end of the day, he's all about being way better at managing your business and when a sale should take place. Now, almost everything he says is kind of what I was originally trained in. He's way more eloquent than even the great teachers that I had. But at the end of the day, it's all about understanding why people typically do the things that they do. It's all about needs-based selling. So it's the effectiveness, this is what Chuck says, it's the effectiveness of your sales conversations that determines how much money you're going to make, how much profit you'll have, and whether you're going to get referrals. So his point is in every sale there is a point in time. By the way, now let me define sale. It's when you're making a recommendation to somebody that you feel so strongly about that is in that client's best interest without any regard to how much money you're going to make. That's my definition of a sale.
Say it one more time, Joel.
Definition for me of selling something to somebody in our profession is that whatever I am recommending to that client, what I'm selling to that client is without question in that client's best interest without any regard to how much compensation I earn. It is never about me. If the situation was reversed, what product, what illustration, what target premium, what performance expectations would I want to see that would motivate me to actually own that product? If that can't pass my muster, I would never turn the illustration around and recommend it to the other person. That is what I call integrity. It is way too easy in this business to take advantage of people by illustrating and doing things the way we did them 20 years ago. That's why we always believe in a projection of cash surrender value at 110% of cumulative premium. That's why we always, at the end of a income flow from a policy, we always want to have a cash surrender value of at least twice the amount of the last year's output. If you cannot meet those criteria, you, in my opinion, you have recommended a very, very poor product. And you are lacking integrity because you're thinking about how much money you can make. Now, in every sale, there is a point in time where the probability of a sale is at its absolute highest. If you present too early, you compromise a perfectly good deal. Know that people will fix big problems, not small ones. Small problems don't motivate people to make any changes. And large sales typically evolve over long periods of time. These are all Chuck's statements. Now, avoiding what he calls the presentation trap. Preoccupation with assumed needs and the presentation of solutions before fully developing the selling opportunity. Now, the roadmap is designed to never be in a position where this is happening. It's their goals, it's their gap, whether it's retirement. It's somebody that is just on the telephone. That if you're just on the telephone, if you would hit the mute button, we would greatly appreciate it. And then if you have a question, just unmute yourself. So years ago, and by the way, he didn't know me with Paradigm. Years ago, the idea was you spent 90% of your time pitching you and what you do and 10% of the time getting information. I know you all realize I'm all about getting information, not giving information. That's why you've got the 3 key questions, right? From a financial perspective, what, if anything, is actually keeping you up at night? Mr. Client, if you were retired today, forget about inflation, forget about any assets that you have. You're there right now. How much annual tax-free income do you need? That's what I mean about getting information. Mr. Client, you're driving home, a drunk driver comes across the median, kills you. Forget about any insurance, forget about any assets you have. Think that the house is paid off. How much income do you need to provide your bride for the rest of her life? What is the annual amount of money you would want to provide her if the mortgage was paid off? This is what I mean about getting information. You should be spending 90% of your time talking to a client here and only 10% giving information until you get to the point where you have created a big need. Because if a client cares enough, if there is a big enough need, if you can deliver a solution within a reasonable budget, you have every key to the kingdom. So let's think a minute about the roadmap. Just go into it for a second and let me show you how we kind of put this all together. Right, so we're going to go in and you develop a case, right? So let's just select the case, make it simple. All right, so let's say that Ernie had a $250,000 goal. He's 50. He wants to retire at 66, and we're going to kill him at 93. And he's got $650,000 in his qualified plan. He's adding 25 grand a year. He's got $400,000 of other assets. For Social Security, he's going to get $3,500 a month starting at age 70. Let's just suppose that were true. And we did our roadmap, and we showed him the effect of his retirement income goal in terms of inflation, that with a 250 goal, he needs 371. By the time he's 93, he needs 601. And if we did not do any slow go or no go, he would have to have assets that delivered $12.6 million of cumulative tax-free income. Does that number surprise you? Now, if you all are not using this section, using this scroll bar, saying you've got to have assets that deliver 12.5 million. That's the total of all of these numbers from 66 to age 93. buying 250,000 of inflation-adjusted goods and services, assuming 2.5% inflation, right? So if you look at the big picture of where he stands, this guy would only be meeting between 32 and 39%. He would have an annual projected shortfall of between 250 and 366,000. That is a big damn problem. Mr. Client, this is where you would stand if this was your circumstance. Now let's not debate for a minute slow go and no go, guys. Let me just make my point. So Mr. Client, don't you agree this is of concern to you? So Mr. Client, we need to accumulate, in an ideal world, an additional 4.6 million between now and retirement, assuming a 4% growth rate, to solve this problem. This means, theoretically, you'd have to put away another $210,000 per year between now and retirement at a 4% after-tax and investment expense growth rate. Now, he's freaked out. Mr. Client, this assumes that every year from 66 to 93, you're going to burn at that rate. Now, everybody just remember the number 210,000. So now I go back to client profile, and now I make slow go 75% of what he was getting here, and I make no go 65% of what he was getting here. Very, very realistic. I hit save and continue. I hit generate results. I go up here, and now look what happened. I still have some significant problems during go-go, lesser problems here, and during go-go, my cash flows are such I'm meeting my goal. So now I'm only short 2.5 million, meaning I only need to put away 117. I have halved, literally halved. So this is my second scenario. Now, I can go to 2%, just to show you cause and effect. What if I up this to 5%? What if I killed him at 91? What if I moved slow go to 80? What would happen? I'm down to a $67,000 number. I've cut it by 65%. I can't tell you what to do in terms of these designs. To me, it's about educating the client on the big shifts in this depending on what happens. And then I go, Mr. Client, the reason why all of this is so important is this. We don't know where you're going to be here. This is something we manage over time. We manage what your life expectancy is going to look like based on your changing medical conditions. Mr. Client, the other thing we do is we manage these net after-tax rates of return. For example, what if money market rates were 17%? In fact, let's be more conservative. All of a sudden, we have superinflation, and for the next 40 years, we have 10%, no, we have 9% money market. So, and let's just say, just for fun, just to fool with you guys, let's just suppose I came over here and I said rate of return was 8% after tax. Maybe it's an 11% money market. Watch what happens. I'm down to nothing. So all we're trying to point out, we're talking a 30, 40-year period of time. Don't get caught up on, I need to put away $200,000 a year. Lots of things are going to change. The reason why I'm in your life, we did this year at age 50. So Mr. Client, let's go back here for a minute. Let's go back and let's make this number 4%, just so we get back on the same wavelength, right? And we generated our results. And you'll remember in this particular scenario, we would have to put away $83,000 a year. So can somebody please remember $83,000? And Mr. Client, we're going to get together every year. You're going to be 1 year older. And we're going to review what happened to your assets. Market was great. You now have $850,000. This has grown to $600,000 in 1 year. You had a great stock. Let's not assume that anything else happened with interest rates, and these still are okay assumptions. Now, you remember, we started saving $82,000 a year. Now what it's telling me, because we had this great year, going forward, we only need to save $67,000 a year. So, Mr. Client, do you see the delicate balance with all this, and why it's so critical that on a yearly basis we are going to review what happened, are you above or below your glide path, what does it tell us about an adjustment you could make based on what happened last year with no change in our assumption. So Mr. Client, in this case, we could go forward and only save at $67,000 a year. But what if interest rates moved up so much that we wanted to change our assumption over here? So now, instead of 60-some, we're at 52. So the reason why it's so important that when we do ongoing universities, once or twice a year, and they evolve, right? So once you've been to one, you come back to another. We start working on things like this. And you should be doing things like this and fooling around and writing these numbers down and learning how to do this in front of clients. You want to wow them? This is how you wow them. It's not that complicated, guys. I'm just fooling around with changes in assumptions, delivering wild swings in what would happen. But this is what makes you, you. This is what differentiates you, and it's critical. And you talk about creating a need, a big need. If it's true, the guy will take action. Then what you've got to do is you've got to be able to show him, can he afford the solution? So that's why we have cash flow. Let's say this guy was making $400,000, right? And his living expenses, look what this says for living expenses. Includes his home budget, current insurance premiums, and any college savings. That's included in this number. It excludes tax-qualified plan contributions and other savings. That's not part of this. So let's say that his current living expenses were $10,000 a month, $120,000 for the year. So when you hit Save and Continue, and you hit Generate Results, and you go to Cash Flow, here's this guy with $400,000. We estimated his taxes. This was based on a 35% bracket. It's way too high, but we put it in there anyway. Delivered an after-tax income of $260. He's got $120 of living expenses. he's putting away $25,000 into his retirement plan. So if you take 260 minus 120 minus 125, he's got 115 of free cash flow. This gives you the money. This cash flow proves the amount of money that somebody has to solve the problems that he faces. Now, if you all aren't looking at this, for those of you that aren't using it or aren't investing the time, shame on you. Because this is the greatest goddamn thing that has ever been created if you just will take the time to use it. And if you click in the Resources tab and you want to learn how to do that, you click on Cash Flow. Guys, there's a whole 12-minute training video here.
Hi everybody, it's Joel Solomon of PRS and the Roadmap, and today we're going to talk about the new tab that we call Cash Flow. Now here we are at our login screen, and of course you would click in, 160. We've got events.
So my point is, it's all here. We've recorded these things. You don't have to listen to me. You just have to go click on these recorded videos. How do I input? How do I use the Widow Planner to calculate? It's 12 minutes. So do me a favor. Sometime
Good morning,
today,
everyone. Joel Solomon here for PR.
Sometime today, or over the weekend, set aside 12.5 minutes and watch me do how I prove to somebody how much insurance they need. Or click on IUL to pay taxes on qualified plan presentations. Down here it says training presentation. So we now have professionally produced, I'm sorry, go down here, training video, my fault. We paid a videographer to come in. Now watch this, guys. 10 minutes. Watch this for just a minute or two. All right, so today we're talking about Index Universal Life to pay taxes on qualified plan distributions. Does he currently have in tax qualified plans, and how much is he contributing each year? Guys, honest to God, it's all here. It's everything that I use in my private practice. Every tool is literally sitting in here. So for most of these, for example, IUL versus alternative investments, reallocating assets. So this is like if you go here to the training video, this is a person that has money in bonds, stocks, etc. It's giving you an example of IUL versus a financial alternative, reallocating $1 million, could be 100,000, could be 10 million. But if you click on it, here we go. So let's talk about Index Universal Life as an asset class. Now again, of course, all the values we show S&P times 150%, getting me a 6.5% credit time up until I take out income, and the distribution phase, which is the part that people don't pay attention. So it's like you've come to an advanced Solomon school, and I'm talking about a particular subject. This is a 10-minute video. Now, I don't care how busy all of you are. Over the course of the next week, a couple times during the day, say, and check off all of these. Check them off that you've gone through them, and cycle through them every 2 weeks, right? How about referrals? Check this out. Professionally videographed just the other day. So today we're going to talk about referrals and how to obtain them. It's really the key to the kingdom. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the road to Oz. So how can you obtain 10 high-quality referrals
from every client that you already have and every new client you're going to work with. Well, and most valuable. Now, with that being said, you also have current clients that you've done work for over the years, and it's time to go back to them and get referrals from them.
So I tell you play by play how to go about doing this. Now, many of you believe in, you know, the experience I've got, the training I've had, the privilege of working with over 3,000 people that have come to a university or a Solomon School, and all the things they've shared with me. Because I would tell you probably at least a third of everything I've got is actually strictly a function of what I've heard from many of you. So I encourage you guys to really take the next number of weeks, set aside a couple time slots every day. This one's a whopping 5 minutes on how to get referrals from your current clients, what to say to new prospects that will tee up how to get clients. So guys, it's 9:15, it ran late. Look forward to our next visit next Friday. Have a wonderful weekend.